the tuck rule
I
and
know.
how silly it was.
I know.
So I think I'm onto something here with this catch rule, Mike, okay? And I understand it was appropriately applied yesterday. I am not arguing that at all, okay? Why, however, if somebody has possession of the football in their hands and by trying to score puts the ball in a spot they normally wouldn't while trying to complete the catch, why are we penalizing somebody trying to score? Why can't we make the change that I'm supposing and proposing? Knee down, which Jesse James had in the field of play, ball that's clearly in his hands. By merely reaching across the goal line, we should not penalize a player. Mike Pereira.
Well, let me first go back to the rule so I can put aside all the people on
you
social
refs have
media
to start that way. Go
that
for
are
it.
killing me on social media because I've heard all night long the knee was down, he reached out, he lunged into the end zone.
Yes.
All of that, which are all true statements, right? And they all apply to the receiver that's on his feet, so who's not going to the ground. Apply totally. Control, 2 feet, element of time. There is no act that you can perform on the way to the ground when you're going to the ground that can reverse it or make it a catch if, in fact, the ball comes loose when you hit the ground. So they interpreted it right. Okay,
correct.
That is correct.
So I'm saying, why can't we now have the act of trying to score being the rule change that you said there is no act that can negate the ground causing the incompletion?
And I think if you do that, you bring in too much of the element of gray. You know, how much is a real reach? How much is a Des Bryant little reach? I mean, when they brought all these ex-players together, you know, to try to come up with some solution, it was interesting. Chris Carter, a bunch of receivers, they all concluded that the rule was okay the way it was because it was more black and white than gray. But yet, it's a problem. I grant you it's a problem because if you look at a rule and you think that, wait a minute, Jesse James doesn't understand the rule, Mike Tomlin doesn't understand the rule, everybody that's watching is thinking it's a catch, and yet replay reverses an official's decision on the field to incomplete, then it's really, to me, not a good rule. And
right.
You know, somebody said to me earlier today, and I've been popular today for the first time in a while, but somebody said to me today, back when you were on the field in 1996, would this have stayed a touchdown? And the answer is yes. Why? Why? Because there was no replay. The problem to me is replay has gone too far. We've gotten too technical in replay. And you're taking common sense decisions that are made on the field and you're reversing them because the ball momentarily moves. To me, this is a judgment element of the game and doesn't belong in instant replay. And if we would just leave the judgment calls into the hands of the officials, what did they rule on Jesse James? What did they rule?
They ruled it a touchdown.
Because it looked like a touchdown, felt like a touchdown, smelled like a touchdown.
Well, Lions fans who are listening to us right now across the country saying Golden Tate was the same damn thing against the Atlanta Falcons, and then all of a sudden now Riveron buzzes in and says, well, wait a minute, knee was here, ball was here, arm was here, not a touchdown, and that might be eventually over the next 2 weeks the difference between Atlanta going to the playoffs and the Lions being home, in the same way that this may be the difference between Pittsburgh having to go to New England or vice versa for an AFC championship game. So how, because I know you have to put things in words in black and white, what would you say to the competition committee in terms of removing plays like this from replay?
Well, I mean, that's what I would say. Let's get catch, no catch out of replay. What would have happened, you think, if we didn't have replay of the play last night? What do you think would have happened? Nothing. There would have been no touchdown. Jim Nance, Tony Romo, they all thought it was a touchdown. When I saw it the first time, I thought it was a touchdown.
So
only when we slowed it down, yes, technically, it's by rule, by the technical application of the rule, it's an incomplete pass. And I was texting back and forth with Joe Buck last night. You know, we had I don't know if you saw the butt cheek play.
Yes, indeed, in Carolina.
And 1 cheek equals 2 feet, you know. You don't need the whole pressed ham to get that inbounds to have it be a catch. 1 cheek is good enough. Are we becoming too technical in this game and making it hard to watch through replay? You know, 4 stops in the last quarter and a half last night in the Raiders-Cowboy game. I'm thinking that we are. I think
Well,
Joe brings a good point, but I don't know how you actually change the rule to say, on your way to the ground, if you perform a football move on the way to the ground, then that immediately makes it a
But
catch.
he's clearly reaching for the goal line. He's
No
clearly
question.
trying
But
to
he could
score.
be
So
reaching.
if that is Mike Pereira, if that is the way you put it in a rule book to say this is the difference between a catch in between the ones and the catch that's going from the one into the end zone, if that is the way that you could change it, because it does look like a catch. Now, you're just saying just take catch, not a catch, out of the replay basket, which is another fix on this front, too.
Yeah.
Now,
You know, the other thing, too, is that everybody points out, which I understand. They say if a runner reaches out and breaks the plane, it's a touchdown immediately.
Correct.
But they
this
have a
guy's not
hard time. He's not a runner.
He's not a runner yet because he has not. I get it, because he has not completed the process of the catch.
Yeah.
My answer to that is, though, is these guys are getting bigger, stronger, faster, more athletic. The process of the catch, certainly in the case of Des Bryant, was truly a 5-yard span. He's that big, that strong, that athletic to be able to catch, switch hands, and put it, trying to get it to the goal line. He should not be penalized for that, and we need to change the rule book based on how much bigger, stronger, faster. We changed the rule book because we can't have the goalpost at the front of the end zone anymore. I mean, because times change. Athletes change. Athleticism is getting more and more prevalent in this league by guys at positions you wouldn't think could make a play like Jesse James did yesterday.
But I think when you already have brought ex-players in and you've already examined it from the top to the bottom and they could come up with nothing, I don't think you're going to get the change. You know, I bring this up, George Young, who I just loved George Young when he was the head of football operations. And I wrote about this. When he was there in 1999, when we brought instant replay back, he didn't want it. He didn't want it, period. You know, he believed in the purity of the game. And he had a little manila folder, right, that he kept his notes in because he was the head of football operations. And normally when you think of a manila folder, you write on the tab, you write instant replay. He wrote in big letters on the front of the file, "The monster grows." and he's right. And it's hard to back things out, but the game's getting hard to watch when it gets so technical.
Mike,
like
I was there at that first owners meeting of the NFL Network's existence down in Florida at the Breakers at 2004, where it was voted to be permanent or not. And I do remember Mike Brown of the Bengals voted no, and Al Davis abstained because that's what he always did.
Sure.
And everybody else said, look, if Joe or Jane Sixpack is sitting at home with that newfangled television they're putting on the wall and can see it, we should use it too. You're on the competition committee. I walk in with the Eisen rule of that the goal line, if you do have two hands on the ball and you already have a knee down or 2 feet down in play, you should not lose a touchdown by the ground causing an incomplete pass because you've reached across. How does that go in that room, do you think?
I think that the room looks at you and says, Rich, you know, I like the way you're thinking, and there are a couple plays that are obvious, but there are far more plays that are not obvious. And we're worried about getting to the gray area, even though Mike Pereira once told you that the tuck rule would never be overturned because it would put in too much gray area.
And I said, and the gray area goes out, is what I said.